with no closing costs, to put cash with no closing cost to seller and to close within 30 days of offer. That is definitive. That means that if you brought the seller a ready, willing, and able buyer under those terms, the seller would definitely owe you compensation for that for doing your job. If you leave it blank, it's open to interpretation. And when it's open to interpretation, a lot of times you will lose in a court of law. The other thing it says is, or other price and terms that are acceptable to me. So that broadens the definition here to say, the seller could take a VA loan or an FHA loan or, whatever other arrangement they want to do, you're covered now and you have a definitive contract with your seller to make sure you're paid. Now let's drop down to compensation, line 22. Most of us are going to put the commission that we are willing to list that property for. In this scenario, let's say we're going to list this $400,000 house for 3.5% of the gross sales price. That's the fee we expect as the listing agent. And then a lot of people will drop down to line 25 and put a non-refundable flat fee of X dollars. In this scenario, I put $5,000 and it says the seller would be subject to a non-refundable flat fee of $5,000 if the property is sold, transferred, conveyed, leased, rented, or made unmarketable by sellers without the written consent of the listing brokerage. Now think about that for a second. If I've got a $400,000 property and I've got a 3.5% commission on it, so if the property sells, I'm going to make $14,000. Pretty good payday, right? What's wrong with line 25 here? Line 25 says that the seller, it says if the seller cuts you out, goes behind your back and goes to the buyer and says, hey, let's cut a deal ourselves. And I'm just going to make the property unmarketable for the next however many days till the contract expires, then the only repercussion you have is $5,000. Now, you procured a buyer, seller cut you out, and you just gave them permission to cut you out for a fee of $5,000, whereas you should have been paid $14,000 for the work you did. Line 25, if you want to make sure you're protecting your commission and you're not giving the seller a loophole to remove you from this transaction without your consent, line 25 should be the equivalent of your percentage times your list price, not some random number thinking that it's not a big deal. It is a very, very big deal. And then the other thing I see on line 27, a lot of people are putting for a flat fee of $2,500 or whatever number it is if the listing is canceled during the term of the listing or any extension subject to listing broker's agreement. So if the listing broker's agreement and they cancel it, now instead of you getting $14,000, guess what you get? $2,500. That is not a win-win for you as a business person. These numbers on line 25 and 27 should be reflective of the percentage you're charging and the list price of the property. Now, if you want to be a nice guy and say, hey, if I agree to it with the consent of the broker, I'll let you out for my hard cost. And I've tracked this over the years. I typically, after about the third week of having a property on the market, I typically have somewhere between $2,000 and $2,500 in hard costs involved in the marketing of it. If you want to be a nice guy, a nice lady here, that's fine. But just know that if that seller cancels it, all you're going to get is 2,500 bucks. And or if they make it unmarketable, which we have had sellers do. I had a seller on an $885,000 property make it unmarketable. Guess what I left blank? Line 25. So I had no repercussion against the seller to get to be paid for my time and effort in that property because I left line 25 blank. So don't be like Lee. Be prudent. Put the numbers in there. Don't be weak. Don't be afraid to ask for what you're worth. 3.5%, $400,000, $14,000 on line 25. Line 27, I would encourage you to do the same. And if the seller is a good friend or something, and you say, well, I'll let you out and I won't charge you the 14,000, you're going to look like a hero at that point. So protect your dollars by making sure your contract is written appropriately. Any questions on that before I go to the next section?
I have a question, Lee. Whenever
Mhm.
you're in that listing appointment and you're going down the lines with the sellers, do you ever get any kickback on them asking about those blanks or percentages? And how would, if so, what is your response?
I don't normally get kickback because this is how I word it.
Yeah.
I don't read line by line. I basically say, hey, my commission is 3.5%. So if we sell the house for $400,000, you're going to pay me 3.5%. Now, I know you wouldn't do this as a seller, but I do have to protect myself because this is a contract and this is a business. And I know you're a good person. You wouldn't do this, but I have to keep things consistent here. Otherwise, I would be accused of treating somebody unfairly. If for some reason you decided to sell the property around me or make it unmarketable, I would still, and I still did my job, I would still be owed a commission. That would be fair, right?
Yeah.
So that's why we put the non-refundable flat fee here of 3.5% times $400,000, which is $14,000. That's why we put that here on line 25. I know you're not going to do this, but I have to stay compliant with the way I do business, and I have to treat everybody the same. Do you have a problem with that?
No, let's get it listed.
All right.
Hey Lee, I've
Yeah.
got a question. So you said by about 2.5 to 3 weeks in, you've usually got about $2,500 in hard cost. Do you have a list of how you calculate that or what you're doing to be able to show that? I mean,
I have a,
because
I have a spreadsheet that I've used in the past for that. And I mean, and y'all really think about this, really start thinking about what it costs you to do business. How much is your MLS dues? How much are your realtor dues? How much is your phone bill? What is the sign cost? What's your prorated share of a lockbox? All of those things have a cost. The signs don't last forever. And yes, we're at Epic and we get our signs for free and they install them and they do our listing photos for free, but it still comes with a cost. And as you start, and then what is your time worth? You've got, I call it my time is a hard cost. I know what I make per hour. So when you start breaking that down and you start, well, my E&O insurance is this, my MLS is this, I average this many listings a year, so this is what it cost me per listing to do business. And and I've got a spreadsheet, I'll dig it out and share it with all of you if you'd like, or create your own, because everybody's going to have their own unique marketing. We've got listing billboards now. That's going to increase that hard cost. So it's more than just sticking it in MLS thinking it doesn't cost you anything to do that. It does. You pay for it every month, every year you pay for it. You're just not prorating it out. If a lot of agents don't think to prorate it out. Does that answer your question, Leslie?
Yes, that would be great if you could share that. Then we kind of got a template that we could take from you. It's been doing this for years and tracking your cost and be able to develop our own. And I think that that also gives us, when we look at that in black and white, I think it also helps solidify in our minds what we really are worth as an agent to somebody and what our time is worth.
Yeah. I mean, everything down to the phone bill and the gas that you put in your car, the little things add up. So, all right, jumping down to line 29, sometimes, and a lot of agents are starting to go to this variable rate, basically saying, hey, if I bring the buyer to this property, I'll reduce my commission. You don't have to pay as much. If you're going to do this, keep your fellow Epic agents in mind. Do not reduce their commission, the buyer side commission. You're going to reduce the listing brokerage, the listing compensation, not the buyer compensation. And or you would need to word it as we have worded here on line 29 that says, if the listing agent, Lee Garland of Epic Realty, personally procures the buyer for this property, then the listing side commission shall be reduced from 3.5% to 2.5%. That is as clear as you can make that statement. If you just put the listing brokerage, or if you just put if Epic Realty, or if I remember, every one of you, your middle name is Natalie, Epic Realty. So we are one. We are not 95 individual agents. We are one brokerage. So if you don't specify specifically who is reducing their commission, you could be reducing your fellow Epic agent's commission if not worded appropriately. Any questions there? All right. And I think I don't know what I've done. Okay, I'm going to stop share for a second and I'm going to reshare. Because apparently I messed it up. All right. Everything else on this form is pretty when you're talking about buyer broker compensation, seller chooses to offer, make sure you've put the percentage they're offering if they're offering. If they're not offering a buyer's brokerage compensation, if the seller's not offering that, then we've got to go back to this. When you list that property for 3.5% or 2.5% or 4.5% or whatever it is that you get, I'm going to challenge all of you, since we are one company, we can talk about commissions. I'm going to challenge all of you to stop asking for 2.5% and 3%. Get paid what you're worth. But if you don't have a buyer broker compensation to be paid, and I list a property and Leslie gets the call on it and the buyer wants to see it, what's poor Leslie going to do? She has a fiduciary duty to show that property because our brokerage is the fiduciary of the seller. But Leslie has no compensation that's going to be paid to her If the seller is not offering co-op compensation and or Leslie doesn't have a buyer brokerage agreement signed with this buyer. So I would encourage you, it would be nice if the sellers were offering compensation to the buyer side. If they don't, that's fine. You may want to change line, you may want to check line 31 here, other, and write and type in if Epic Realty procures a buyer, unrepresented or not. I'm sorry I didn't put this in the on the screen, but go back to this. If Epic Realty procures a buyer, unrepresented or not, who closes on this property, Epic will be due a fee, call it 2.5%, 3%, for working, for compensation for working, for facilitating the sale of both buyer and seller. We'll work on the verbiage for that and put it in writing so that it's clear for everyone. But hopefully you're following, you're tracking with me at the moment. Because if you have no compensation, we still have a fiduciary duty to show that property, even if you were not the listing agent, because technically you are, because you're Epic Realty, every one of you. Natalie, you have any thoughts on that? Or did you?
So if I was following along correctly, you would go on line 40 under the buyer brokerage compensation. Is that correct? And you would put that line 31 on other, you would spell that out there under compensation.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point.
Because we are all one for all for one. We're
Yeah.
the Musketeers.
Absolutely. Especially see Epic, the brokerage itself. So yeah, if we didn't have that wording furnished properly and another agent was going to go show it, of course they couldn't exclude it if the agent, the said listing agent did not put the verbiage in there properly, because it's still the fiduciary duty of the brokerage to service that client. So they would have to go show that property. It's not like they could say if there's not a commission being offered, just out of sheer neglect for the contract, and the wording wasn't put in there properly, they still have to show that property.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Good point.
All right. That's really, I didn't want to just, we had no intention on reading everything on the contract. Just wanted to make sure that each of you were protecting your compensation and making sure your contracts were written appropriately. It's real easy to say, oh, well, if the property is made unmarketable, we'll just put a smaller fee on there. Or if you cancel, we'll put a smaller fee. But you're legally giving the seller options when you do that. And, when the seller's faced with paying $14,000 of commission or $2,500 or $5,000 worth of commission, and they're scraping pennies, it's everybody's friends until they're not. So make sure that you're legally protected in the way you write your contracts. All right, any questions?
I do have another question, Lee. So we had this scenario to come up actually yesterday. ABC Realty, so not our brokerage, but ABC Realty has a seller. There's a hot property that comes on the market. They receive multiple offers. The listing agent signals to one of our agents that they are willing to pay a buyer's brokerage commission. When it comes down to it, seller comes back and says, I don't want to pay a buyer's brokerage commission. So our agent, of course, they go back and they ask, was it agreed upon in the listing? The other agent wouldn't answer. So if it was agreed upon in the listing that the seller would pay a buyer brokerage compensation, what in that scenario, in that case, what happens?
So in that scenario, it's one where you're going to wish you would have requested the
Right.
compensation agreement form from the listing agent on the front end. That, um, be, but at the end of the day, it's all negotiations, right? And if you've got three people vying for the same property and the seller has, and one agent says, no, I'll waive my compensation or reduce it, then it's going to be hard to compete against that.
Yeah.
They did that prior to August 17th.
Yeah.
So today, but MLS used to be a contract between brokers that said that, hey, if you show this property and you bring a buyer to it and they buy it, you're due X%, period. That is no longer the case. So, but if you had that form on the front end, that would be beneficial. I I personally do not request that form because I'm going to charge my fee regardless of what if I request that form and it says two and a, this is my thought. If I'm working for 3% with my buyer and I request that form and it says they're willing to pay 2.5%, I have to notify my buyer of that.
Yeah.
And my buyer is going to look at me and say, it's just 0.5%, Lee. Just you can do that, right? I don't want to have that. I don't want to have that conversation. Hey, buyer, it's 3%. Yeah, we signed it. Hey, we found a property. This, and just write it in the offer. Seller to pay on buyer's behalf, buyer's brokerage commission of 3%. What I'm finding since August 17th is the buyers that are doing that are getting more commission versus what it was actually being offered in the past.
Yes. Yeah. We're seeing a lot of that too come across contracts. So it's actually, I would say it's been a positive change.
I see we got a hand up. Janice, what you got? Can't hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm trying to I don't like this on the phone because I can't ever figure out how to unmute. So my question about that form, when you ask for the form you're talking about where they, I know it's negotiable. When is it appropriate to ask for that form? Is it before you're going to send the offer? Do I ask for it before I show the house, after I show the house, so I can have all that information while we're considering our options? When should I ask the agent for that form? And what if they don't have the form? Will I be making them get the form?
No, you have to have the form.
Hey, Janice.
Okay. Yes.
What we were told when they were doing the meetings is that you can, when you call to set up the listing appointment, you can request that form at that point.
Okay.
I do that with all of if I have any showings or if I'm like when I'm training new agents or even our current agents who are not yet familiarized with all the changes, I tell them to always request that form prior to any showings. And it's a simple conversation. Hey, so-and-so, can you send me over the F-51 form? I actually had and I'm not going to name brokerages, but it was one of the top brokerages in Jackson. And I had to heavily educate that agent the other day because she called me and she asked me if the seller was offering concessions. And I said, do you mean cooperation / commission or concession? And she was like, oh, is he willing to pay a percentage? So I had to educate her on the difference. And I also educated her on the F-51 form. And she said, this is so odd. I've never heard of this before. So I just kind of smiled. I smiled and she thanked me at the end of the day. So I said all that to say, even when you're working with agents on the other side of the table, it's a learning curve for a lot of agents out there right now. Extend grace, and just take the time. If you feel comfortable enough talking about it, take the time to explain it, because at the end of the day, she was very grateful and she learned something new. And she was like, I had no idea what that form was. So, but yes, F-51 form prior to any showing, and it's just a simple request and they can send it directly to your email.
Natalie, like
Thank you.
Lee was saying, hey, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Hey, Josh.
Okay. Like Lee was saying, when you have a buyer, if I have a buyer, I don't want that 51 because I know what my fee is. And it could really cause some hard feelings if their seller, and honestly, I don't care if it hurts the feelings or not, but it makes it easier in the transaction. If they're offering 2%, it's on that F51. I don't want to see it because I know what my 3.5% is. I don't want to see the 2%, 2.4 on their F51. I want to write the offer, put my fee on there, and we'll deal with it afterwards. Now, if I have a seller that's only offering 2%, then I'm going to send that F51 out with the showing request. That way they know, and it's a better chance they're going to put that 2% on that offer than their 3% or whatever they were going to originally offer. So that's when I would use both of those forms or not use that form.
That's exactly my mindset on it. And 100% my mindset. It's not that Natalie's right and Josh and I are wrong or Natalie's wrong. It's what you're comfortable with. But I personally find that if you do wind up hurting, somebody gets their feelings hurt if they say, well, I told you it was 2% and now you're asking for 3%. Who do you think you are?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, no, that's why I didn't ask, because I know who I am and I know what I'm worth. So, but yes, if you've got a seller, you definitely want to provide that form, especially if they're offering what may be considered a lesser commission than what people maybe have been accustomed to. Because people don't, let's face it, people don't like conflict. And if they're offering 2% and the agent was really hoping to work for 2.5%, they're probably just going to let it go and take the 2%. They've done it for years. That's during buyer agency prior to August 17th. Agents just took whatever it was listed in MLS. They just took it. So, all right. Any other questions?
Lee, I have a quick question.
Go
So,
for it.
on the listing agreement, if the seller said they're going to compensate the buyer's agent 3%, and so you put it on the F51, the F51 form, to the buyer's agent, they've requested it. And then let's say they come in like with a really low offer. Do they still have to give them that full 3%? Or at that point, can they still negotiate that even though it was originally said it was going to, this is what they're offering?
So they're offering that compensation.
Right.
And they said, and basically it's offered to a ready, willing, and able buyer, as line 35, 36, 37, 35, 36 shows. Ready, willing, and able buyer, they're offering that compensation. I would say that the buyer's not ready, willing, and able if they're not willing. If let's say we've got this $400,000 property.
Yes.
And the buyer comes in and says, I want it for $375.
Okay, correct.
And the only way to make it work is to reduce the commission.
Correct.
Well, it doesn't work.
Okay. That's what I want to make sure, because I know that I can see a lot of agents saying, well, you said, here on this form, you'd give 3%. And that would be something that, I could say, well, look, your offer wasn't sufficient. It wasn't, a good offer, but I didn't know if I could say that or not.
Yeah, I would turn around and say, yeah, but would you want me to give 3% and sell the house for $1? I mean, it's listed for 400. You offered me 375. It's not about the commission here. It's about the net to the seller, and the net is not enough. If your buyer is willing to go up, yeah, we can certainly make this work out. But right now we don't have a ready, willing, and able buyer to buy this house at what it's listed for. We have somebody lowballing it, and so your compensation is and don't be like this, but this is kind of ugly. Your compensation is a direct reflection of your ability to guide and help your buyer negotiate an accepted contract.
So we're operating under variable rate commissions now?
No, well, a lot of people on line 29, Amy, a lot of agents are starting to put those variable rates in there. I'm not, it's okay.
Investors in the past have always used that a lot of times, national investors, and this just sounds very similar to that process.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions this morning?
Line 47, line 48. Is that the protection period, the number of days?
Yep. Number of days. I know Natalie puts like 180 days in there or something like that. I put 90. I would tell you, and I don't have that to pull up on the screen, but I will tell you the protection period. If you put anything, in my opinion, if you put anything less than 90 days, people will wait you out. 30 days will go by like that, but most people will not wait 3 to 6 months to cut you out. So I would encourage you to always put 90 plus days in there. Bob?
Just a small note on that P51 or L51, the disclosure of compensation, lines 18 through 20. I'll just read it verbatim. This disclosure is not an offer of compensation. Any offer of compensation is subject to confirmation by written agreement. So this form, I still don't know what the point of it is, but it's not binding on anybody.
It's just a disclosure.
And so
it's not a contract.
It's
saying
not.
We agree to pay this come hell or high water. It's not
No.
binding contract.
It's not binding at all. So I'm kind of with Josh on that. Shredder.
I know, so and I'm just going to brag on some of you. I've been talking with several of you about deals that you're negotiating, and some of them have been pretty intense. And we've got a lot of good agents here at Epic that are really out there hustling and making things happen. And it's impressive to me to see agents dig in and stand their ground and pull together things that most other agents won't. And I'm going to say this about, I was talking with, I'm going to brag on Janice a little bit here. Janice was negotiating a deal on a commercial piece of property, which she got under contract. Yay. But they initially wanted her seller to jump through a bunch of hoops before they even had a contract. And they were so afraid they were going to lose the deal that they said no to that. And they stood their ground and basically got everything they wanted. And her seller thinks she's a hero because she's probably 20, 30,000 above what the seller thought the property would sell for. So you catch more flies with honey. And Janice is really good. Janice has been really good about helping and working and letting the other agent think that it was their idea.
Yeah,
Hey, Lee.
we're 120,000 more than what. No, I'm sorry. They wanted 350. We got 479.
Wow, that's awesome.
Lee, I want to say about Janice as well, and just common knowledge. And I missed about 5 minutes in between here, and y'all, if you've already covered this, Lee, just tell me. But Janice had a residential deal that, they were offering the compensation, offering this and that and the other. And of course, it all comes down to negotiation. We all know that. But sometimes when you've got a property like she was looking at for her buyer, and it's been on the market a while, or really even if it hasn't been on the market for a while, and you negotiate till you just cannot negotiate anymore, and you feel like maybe the other side's being a little unreasonable for whatever reason, I told Janice, I said, it's of course up to your buyer, but I would recommend that you tell them that, you appreciate it. Y'all have done everything you can, but obviously you cannot come to terms and walk away from it. Go look at another house, or tell them you're going to look at another house. And chances are they'll come back to you probably within 24 hours or 48 hours at the most. And that's exactly what happened with Janice. They were like, what do you mean? This listing agent's calling Janice. Well, what do you mean they're not going to, send another counter back? I mean, they won't take what we want is unreasonable, and Janice ended up getting exactly what she wanted for her buyer by just holding out and standing her ground. And sometimes you just have to walk away from a deal like that and let that seller sit there and stew on it for a little bit. And they'll usually come back around unless it's a big seller's market like we had a while back. But right now you can afford to do that for your buyer if that's what they want you to do, is just take that time to step away, have some room to breathe, and that seller usually will come back around and be more reasonable.
Yep, absolutely. All right, it's been fun today. Natalie, we got anything else?
I just wanted to recap on those listing billboards are active now. So all of you who have listings that you're wanting to showcase to your seller and get more brownie points, go in there and order your listing billboard for your seller, because that's a game changer. Nobody else can say that they can give their sellers listing billboards in your market. So utilize those tools. It's one of your benefits with Epic, and have fun with it. I haven't personally used it yet, but I was excited when I saw that it was active. So has anyone on the call used the listing billboard link?
Mm-mm.
Hey, Natalie, can you clarify or what the terms are? Do you only get one, or is it one a month, or is there a price point that it has to be to qualify for the billboard?
So let me do a screen share real quick and we'll walk through it together. I don't know the answer to that because I haven't ordered that yet. So I'm not sure. Let me see, but I can pull it up and we'll go into Epic Cloud and we will look together. So if you go to, when you're in Epic Cloud, go to benefits and services, and then you're going to scroll down. I did not get a, like a clause that said that there was a caveat to it, which there may be. I'm just not sure. I'm sorry, I told you guys wrong. Go to marketing benefits. Yeah, they like to change stuff up on me. So that your dashboard has changed. Go to marketing benefits, and then you're going to click on listing billboard here. So you'll go there. It's going to ask you, do you have an active listing? I'm going to say yes. Link your listing in MLS showing you're the listing agent, your headshot, a clear photo of the front of your listing, and then of course just generic bedrooms, bathrooms. Just ask your listings in MLS, put your link there, bedroom, bathroom. So 121 Yorkshire. I know this is 4-2. I don't know that MLS ID, but let me go grab it real quick.
And while she's doing that, I'm going to say this. When you're talking to your sellers about listing billboards, if set the appropriate expectation with your seller, otherwise they're going to be mad. Because if they go down Highway 49 and they look up and they don't see their house sitting on that listing billboard, understanding that it rotates, they're going to call you and say, hey, this didn't happen. Yeah. So let them know on the front end, hey, we've got listing billboards. Just want to let you know it rotates in and out. So when you're driving by, if you don't see it, don't worry. It's on rotation. Hopefully you'll be there and you'll get a chance to see it while it's up. But I would set that expectation so that you don't get that phone call.
Good point, Lee. Very good point. All right, so I've got that in here. Let's go to next, upload my headshot. We're just gonna use this one for now. It's simple. Listing photo, it wants one good listing photo, so this is not the best property to showcase. It's a foreclosure. You know, honestly, I don't know if I'd want to put that on listing billboard. I mean, let's try.
Go for it. That reminds me of an ad years ago in the Clarion Ledger. The only thing holding this house together is the termites holding hands.
That's a good one.
Lee, you told me to use that marketing that termite house, remember?
I did. Just so you know, it wasn't an original thought. I stole it from somebody else.
So for this one, all right, and I would just touch on this for a second. Whenever I am doing, so we have listings all over the state, but whenever I'm doing a listing for that particular area, I want this listing to go in that market, right? So I'm going to put the zip code of the market where that listing is on here. And yes, you can do that. I've gotten that question a lot from agents. You absolutely can do that. Epic does not have a clause stating that you can't. So just keep in mind that, let's say your listing is an hour from your current location, you would want to use that zip code for that listing location. All right, and submit it. And that's it. Y'all, that was like super quick and simple. So not the prettiest picture, but hey, if it maybe somebody in Laurel, they're visiting for hometown and they see my listing and, you know, I don't know, maybe it gets sold that way. So that was super simple and real quick to do that. So it's ordered. It says it goes live within 7 to 10 days, and they should send you an email once it's ready. So that's neat.
The fine print on the screen before said that listing billboards are subject to availability.
That's what I was about to ask.
Saturation.
Yeah. So same as our personal billboard, right?
Correct.
Yes. And so I guess we would approach that when we're in a listing appointment. You know, by the way, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, one of my marketing benefits is if it is available, I will put your house on a local billboard ad that is going to run consecutively at certain times of the day, or however you want to word it. You can put your own spin on it. But yeah, just make sure you're putting that disclosure in there if it is available. Okay, Lee, thank you so much for teaching us today. Appreciate your time.
Sure.
Hey, so Natalie, where do we find out if there's only one, that you only get one, or how many of those you can do? I mean, I'm sure there's a limit on that per agent.
I'll ask benefits, and we can always email benefits@epicrealty.com, and they will tell us as well. So that's, I'm gonna put in the chat box for everybody, benefits, but I will ask them also. I'll send an email after I'm off of the call and ask if there's a limit. I have not been told that there's a limit. I mean, there could possibly be, but I'll find out.
Josh Miller in a previous power hour, whatever we call that thing, said there was no limit.
Okay.
It was for all listings. He said there's no limit, it's for all listings, but it is based upon availability. So as you can imagine, the more listings Epic has, the less frequent that listing will appear.
Yeah. Thank you, Lee.
Sure.
All right. Well, do y'all have any other questions for us or questions for Lee regarding contracts today?
That was a great presentation and some really great points. Lots of value today.
Thank you, Lee.
All right.
I do have a question, and I don't want to take too much time with y'all, but I have a deal working right now where I have 14 sellers. So one of the sellers that represents the whole side of another family, has asked if he could be used. He's a commercial lender, and he said, can I use my DocuSign to get them to sign documents? And I was like, let me ask my state broker that question, because I don't know what your thoughts are on that. Would you rather me just put it through dotloop? And because I don't talk to all these sellers, I talk to one representative of the family, but legally, according to the attorney, we do have to have 14 sellers on the contract.
Okay. Yeah, you would need from your side to send it to everyone just so we can keep record of it. I just, I would like to think that people would do the right thing, but there's always that question in the back of my mind, are they going to do the right thing? And so to keep down a liability for liability purposes, just as a whole, you would need to send that. No, he doesn't need to send anything for signature.
Yeah, that's my feeling too. I told him I would ask it because he said it would be easier for him to just do it. I was like, well, we might have to coordinate. I'll set it up. I'll let you know that it's ready. You can call all your people, tell them that it's coming, tell me that you've called them, and then I'll send it all at one time and let them sign. I did ask him, maybe we could talk to the attorney to see, Leslie suggested this for like a limited power of attorney, perhaps, as we progress, because I don't really know he's like, how many times are we going to have to do this through the contract? I'm like, as many times as there's a change to the contract, we're going to have to do it. So, so this will be interesting.
Is there a designated executor? Like, is this an estate? No? Okay.
No, it's very messy.
You have 14 sellers on this one property.
Yes,
Wow.
because the parent died. And so the probate, and then one of his children died, and then one of her children died. So it's like it's going down into 3 generations of family members to sell. And there's really no executor because there was no will, there was nothing, no one probated anything. So it's a very interesting dynamic. The buyers are aware of the situation, and all the sellers are willing to sell, but it's a little contentious between the family, and he doesn't talk to one of the other sides because of a divorce. So I was just like, this is going to be fun. So, but everybody seems to be on the same page. He just thought it could be easier if he did it. And I was like, I don't think that that's going to be appropriate for you to request signatures for something my broker, wants. I said, but I will entertain it and I will ask her. But I think that we need to procure the signatures so we can have ownership over, the presence of those signatures.
Yeah, Bob, I think Bob has an input on that too.
Yeah, Janice, you said that this matter is in probate. I'm assuming Harrison Chancery.
No, it's over. The probate is all over. Fred Hoff did the work on it, so everything is situated. And I've talked to Mr. Hoff, and so we're good to go to proceed. But Hoff did tell me we have to put 14 sellers on the contract.
Okay, so it's already gone through probate, so the estate's closed.
Pretty much the estate is not closed according to some other things. It's like this has to close before he can finish some other stuff. And they're in Alabama. So this is a property that the Alabama family owned in Mississippi in partnership with my Mississippi sellers. So I have 3 sellers on one family side, their fathers passed. And then I have, 11 sellers on the 11 sellers on the other side of Alabama that their dad passed. And the 2 men were in partnership with no wills. So they've already negotiated all that needs to be negotiated in getting that resolved. It's just that they have to now list 14 sellers, said Fred. So we're very early in the stages. We just went under contract, and I guess Fred will navigate for us. I just didn't know the best way to collect the signatures, because it looks like it's going to be an ordeal every time we have to do a signature.
Got to be an easier way to do that.
Crazy. I'm surprised they didn't name an executor with it going through probate.
Well, if there's no will, you don't have an executor. You have something equivalent called an administrator.
Okay.
Okay. So, but it's already closed. So I'm just kind of surprised that the administrator is not empowered to sign on behalf of all the beneficiaries.
Yeah.
That's what Fred directed it. And Leslie said Fred was really good at this stuff. And so I'm just going to follow Fred's lead. And that's why the first thing, we were just going to amend the contract, because we really only went under contract with a couple of the sellers because we didn't know that it was even going to pass through all the counters back and forth. So now we're about to amend the contract to add all the sellers now that we are under contract. So again, I was hoping there would be an easier way, like you said, Bob, to help this, at least get him under there once. And then perhaps after everybody's on there, then maybe we could have him direct it. But I talked to the seller today on that side, and he's like, look, there's just a lot of family drama. And I don't even talk to the one side. I talk to somebody who represents the other side of my people. So it's just quite a ordeal. They're all willing to sell because they're all willing to they know they're going to benefit off of it. It's just that they all have infighting between each other. So
it's all fun and games until it's not.
yeah. So, I might position that to him. I might position that to him to say, hey, it's probably better that I do the signatures anyways. Then, you know, if you
that's a great idea, Janice, that you're, because there's not an agent on the other side. This is just one of the family members that's wanting to facilitate. And so that since there is some infighting with everyone, I think that is probably your best solution.
I'll just send a group email maybe to the entire side introducing myself, and then say, hey, look, we'll be collecting some signatures. I'm happy to get this deal done for your family. I'm very honored, you know, da 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 da. You will be getting a signature request from me, you know, here in 5 minutes. So, okay. Well, if I have anything come up with that, if Fred gives us an idea about the executor stuff, I'll ask you, Natalie, and see if you approve of it. I knew your name was on the line, and that's what I told that seller. I said, look, this is my broker's name on the line, and I don't know that she'll be comfortable with that, but I will ask her just because, you know, you have asked me to ask.
I really appreciate you asking. Thank you for that. You know, what I have found in working with family and then, you know, multiple family members like that, they sometimes tend to think they know what they're doing and they want to take charge. But if they will leave it up to us as the professional to do our job, and I had that conversation with them in a very tactful way, you know, this is why I'm working for you. This is my job. I am more than happy to do all of this. You know, let me handle this. You sit back and relax. So it's just those, you know, the conversations have to be had. And then I would thank him for, you know, offering, but at the end of the day, it just, we have to make sure that we're being compliant and that we are the ones that are sending that out for signature.
Okay, perfect. Thank you all so much.
You're welcome.
Hey, Natalie, Amy's got a question. She's asking if Form F-52 is required now, and should we load it in the docs and MLS for potential buyers?
That is for the seller disclosure, I believe. Is that right? Let me see.
Transfer disclosure.
Yes,
document.
it is required. Yes, it is. They have added that with the property condition disclosure statement, and it should be uploaded with the PCDS.
As one combined, or does it matter?
It should be in your template, loop template, if it's not.
Okay.
And I know Josh is on the call too. I haven't checked to see if it's actually integrated. So whenever you've gone into .loop, it should automatically be in there. Like if you have like your listing template, it's not going to be on there on the buyer's template. But if you have it for your buyer stocks, like if you're writing a contract, I would attach it with the property condition disclosure statement. But if you're on the listing side, I would go ahead and upload that document to the MLS under the document section.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the file directly above, or the form directly above the PCDS in your listing loop.
All righty. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, y'all. Y'all have any other questions or anything we can help you with today? Y'all don't forget about the Lofty training with Adam Frank. If you have not RSVP'd yet, send me a message directly and I'll get you hooked up with the person who's handling all of that. So, but look forward to seeing all of you. Hope you can make it. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. Lee, thank you again for coming on today.
Y'all have a great week.
Thank you.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.